it's gonna get on this thing. So, you know, I could have had it to where it's just like this. It wouldn't come all the way to the back. It would actually stop after just a small amount. But I can't make it go any further forward. I just think that they feel like crap. If this thing was actually, you know, going to be mine, I definitely would have put a VP trigger on it, because that thing's just terrible. Anyway, board I can't really comment on. The boards on the Droids I think were the same as the older Cyborg boards, the 06 and the 07 Cyborgs. They probably have all the modes you want, but I really don't know too much about the stock board, and I apologize for that. Their stock grips were wraparounds and rubberized. They didn't feel real great. They're a little bit rough, and then they don't have texture going this way, they have texture going down. Although they do provide grip, I think they fit. You know, most people are looking for grip this way. You know, they want it to really grip in their hand so it's not coming sliding out. I don't think they really care about their hand sliding up and down, or at least that's the way I feel. So I think that was a little bit silly. But they still provide good grip, and they feel alright. Obviously they didn't have an OLED board stock. It's just an LED that has a little light up here. Other than that, they feel okay in the hand. My hand sits nicely up in there. The trigger kills it for me. I think that the trigger frame's a little bit too low. It's a little bit too low. If this, you know, if it didn't have so much metal right here, I think it would sit a little bit nicer if my fingers could actually rest here instead of being a little bit further down. And these corners on the trigger are really sharp. So I mean, if you come down on them, I bet if I wasn't wearing gloves, I'd actually cut the piss out of myself if I was holding the trigger and then came down on that corner. So really, I think the trigger ruins the experience of it, which is a little bit of a shame because they're great shooters. But trigger's crap, ASA's crap, HPR is nice to work on, but a little bit stupid that they decided to go with wrench only. But like I said, just don't tighten it down with a wrench and you're ready to go. Great design on the on-off button. It does make programming the OLED boards a little bit different though. You know, you're used to using power button or something to sift through. You know, maybe you would press the power button to select something you wanted to change, and then you'd use a trigger to actually do the changes. But now it's just a hold in the trigger until it what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, hold in the trigger. You're gonna use the trigger to actually change your settings. So it's just, you know, you hold in the trigger to actually go into the programming section of it, if that makes any sense. So I come to a setting such as balls per second, I hold in, it comes on the screen to hold, and then I can actually enter the programming section to where I can give it the little clicks. So you can't use a power button for it at all, and it makes everything through the trigger, which makes it feel a little bit weird, but it's still not too bad. You get used to it real quick actually. Feed neck's not so bad. Never had a complaint about a MacDev feed neck, to be honest with you. They hold well. They have the, you know, this one's got the little thumb screw, which is tight as hell, so you can't really use it too well, but it's still there. You know, it holds. I'm not gonna make any complaints. Could have been a little bit lower, but they're definitely not anything that I'd consider a high rise or anything like that. They use, is this high cover? Yes, it is. They use ball style detents, which most people will know that I'm not a huge fan of. You know, you have the spring that you need to worry about, and then your little ball style detent. And then their eyes. Again, as I've said in other videos, if you have an eye plate that comes all the way down to the frame, you're going to have a lot of working room with the wire. As you can see here, you have very little room to work with that wire. And it makes you put a real good bend on them. I know a lot of people that have had these style eye covers that have ended up, you know, destroying their eye wires because they've overbent them or something like that, because you need so much of an angle on them. But overall, it shouldn't be a huge deal. You get used to the stuff really quick. And to be honest, they look nicer with just a little tiny section. You know, it just flows a lot better with the body instead of having the huge piece that comes all the way down to the frame. So I'll get into the bolt engine. Kind of rambling. This actually should have been the end of the video rambling. I'm so used to taking the bolt engine earlier in that I was almost like, oh, well, that's a droid and bye. But I looked up at the time, it's like 39 minutes, I haven't done something. Anyway, it is not a toolless removal. I believe it is this Allen key here. I believe it's a 1/4. And it is. Right. Ooh, almost forgot. Droids, they have a set screw for the bolt engine, so you need to remove that screw right there. Which, if I'm not mistaken, is the same Allen key as the grip frame screws. And it is. Oh shit, this thing was tight. Alright. It's probably because I backed out that cap a little bit. I put a little bit too much stress on the threads. I really should have put that back. Anyway, it's a really tiny screw. It just keeps the bolt engine in place. Always remember to take that out before you try to get the entire bolt section out. This thing doesn't screw out. The back cap is not attached to anything. It's just a cap. It's not like a DM or a demon or anything like that. It's really just a cap. That's it. There's no O-rings inside it. It's just this one O-ring here on the threads, which is again one of those kind of like non-essential is a really bad word to use, because obviously you should have all your O-rings intact, but it's an O-ring that could be chewed up and still serve its purpose fairly well, as long as it's, you know, if your O-ring's leaking, the O-ring's leaking. But typically, if you see a little bit of damage on it, it's not something you need to replace. A lot of O-rings you'll see, it's like, oh man, I nicked an O-ring on the engine, I gotta replace it. Yeah, you kinda do. But on those type of O-rings, if you nick it, if it's getting shaved, or it's getting split, or something like that, it's really not an issue. Anyway, finger down the bolt, or down the breech, and then you'll get this little section here. Ooh, boy. And then I'll stick the gun over here. So, this is the bolt engine. Clones and droids and not so much the Drone DX, but definitely Drone and Droid. I'm sorry, the Clone and the Droid have very complex bolt systems, especially compared to any of the other guns out there. If I'm not mistaken, this droid has 18 O-rings on the bolt engine alone, so it's kind of extreme. I don't know the names of all the pieces here. Some of them I'm a little bit sketchy on. I didn't go through the manual or anything like that so that I could practice for this. So whatever they call them, I really don't care. I'm just going to call this... Come on, let go. I really just call this the back section. I'm sure as a technical name, for me it's just the back section. There's nothing going on it. There's no O-rings. No O-rings. Not even in the inside. There's nothing going on here. It's just a piece that the power tube that kind of holds the power tube in place. It doesn't do anything else other than that, or as far as I'm aware. Obviously it volumizes and stuff there on the back, but I don't think it really has any good solid function, to be honest with you, other than to hold this the power tube in place. So yeah, the power tube, or whatever, I'm 90% sure that this thing's called power tube. And then it sits in the keg, which also holds the valve. So the power tube, it is hollow through here, but there's not anything you really need to do in there. You might want to run a cotton swab in there and try to clean it out if it was problems, but there's no O-ring in there or anything like that. But it does have 3 O-rings on the outside here. So there's 3 of your O-rings. The outside of your keg, not sure how this is showing up, has 3 O-rings. 1, 2, and 3. So it's, you know, we're already up to 6 O-rings, but these things don't move during your operation. This thing sits completely still. And that's the same for the power tube. As far as I'm aware, I don't think the power tube moves at all. I think it's also just completely static. It just sits here. So we're up to 6 O-rings, and all 6 so far have been static. So they don't typically need to be replaced. But the problem becomes when you suddenly spring a leak, or your gun's being a little bit weird, things are sticking and stuff like that. The issue becomes that there's just so many O-rings, you don't really know which one's causing the problem. And if you've inspected all of them, they all look good. It might not even be the O-ring, it could be the HPR for all you know. It could be a lot of different things. So a lot of O-rings definitely makes troubleshooting much more difficult. Anyway, you've got the valve, which has an additional 3 O-rings on the outside, also static. This thing isn't going to be moving around. And then it has nothing on the inside. There's no internal O-rings here, but it does have those three O-rings along the outside. So I'll just stick them here, and we'll have a bunch of parts laying around. Next, you have what they call the joiner, and this is what connects the valve to whatever this front part's called. Again, I call this the back part. I call this the front part. More technical than that, I don't really get. Push the bolt out here. Anyway, actually, let me put that back in there so that I can discuss it a little bit better. The joiner has got the 1 O-ring on the outside here. Come on, focus up. 1 O-ring here, and then it's got the 1 internal O-ring there. So that's 2 on the joiner. I don't like internal O-rings, as I've said, but this one's very easy to get to. I still don't like internals, but at least it's easy to get to. So now we've got 3 on the power tube, 3 on the keg, I'm sorry, on the valve, 3 on the keg, 2 on the joiner, and so far everything has been static. And that is at least fairly positive. I'm not going to make any complaints about that. You know, static O-rings aren't too bad. It's when you get into a lot of dynamics that things really start to go to hell. This one, yeah, I complain about a lot of guns because they have an O-ring that kind of prevents things from coming out. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you know, you hate the DM and you hate the demon and whatever else because of that O-ring that kind of like stops the bolt. Why don't you complain about the clone with that same thing? And that's because, you know, the clone and the droid, it just comes right out. I mean, there's no effort needed at all, really. I mean, it obviously sticks a little bit, but it comes right out. I don't need to remove that O-ring at all. It's not like with the demon where you really got to jam on that damn thing to get it through, you know. So it's not a big issue to get this thing out. You do not need to remove that O-ring, and it doesn't have enough friction, and it's not trying to press through a small enough hole that you risk damaging the O-ring to any actual extent. It probably takes much more of a beating going in and out, you know, under here with the feed neck. You know, as it goes forward and transitions into the breech area and then goes into the next section. You know, it's also going. It's going through conversions like this. Maybe not as tight, but still conversions. And so it's really just not an issue. You're not going to really damage it. This front part, again, I don't know the names of them, not the technical names. Has 3 O-rings along the outside. Again, static O-rings. 1, 2, and 3. And then 1 internal here. Right there. So that one is also a dynamic O-ring because that the bolt's sliding around on it. And then we have 3 more O-rings on the bolt itself. Where are we? We've got this one here, bolt tip, and then 2 right here. That's showing up, but there's 2 right here. I think this one might actually just be a bumper O-ring, but I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure about that at all. But I have a feeling that it might just be a bumper O-ring. I don't think that it has any sort of seals on it. So as you can see, this is the whole bolt system. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 parts plus the back cap, but I'm not going to count it because it doesn't attach. So, you know, we're talking 7 parts for the bolt section, and I'm going to double check. I think it's 18 O-rings. We got 3 on the power tube. That doesn't have any. 2 on the joiner. So now we're up to 5, up to 8 after the 3 on the valve. 3 more. We're up to. I'm sorry, 4 more, isn't it? Get a little light in here. Does this not have an inner surface? No, this did not have an inner surface. I'm thinking of the front section. I'm sorry. 3 more on the keg. So we got 3, 6, 7, 8. This one had the internal. 9, 10, 11 O-rings. This one has 4. So this brings us up to 15. 3 on the outside, and then 1 inner surface there, and then 3 more on the bolt. So it is sure as hell 18 O-rings on the bolt system. However, the maintenance on it's still pretty straightforward. It's only got the one one internal O-ring? Two, I'm sorry, there's one on the joiner as well, yes. Two internal O-rings, but both are fairly simple to get to, but they're still internal, so I'm going to bitch about them. Or inner surface O-rings, I'm sorry. But it's still not too bad. It's just when troubleshooting comes. Maintenance, it's a lot of parts and a lot of whatever else, but it's not like, oh my god, this thing's impossibly hard to figure out. It's just that when troubleshooting, the day this gun stops working, or you develop some sort of leak to the bolt system, God help you, because it's going to be a long day unless you get lucky and hit it on the first try. So anyway, I'll put it back together. Again, I would just wipe these things off and quickly relube them. It's not really needed. I did this last night because this gun actually had oil on it. So it's not really going to be needed. So anyway, start off with the front section here. And you can see here, this one's a little beaten up. But that's what the set screw goes into, that little hole right there. So when you have this in the gun, this little front section sits right there, and the screw comes in through the body and screws directly into this front section. So that's how that works, and that's what that set screw does. Anyway, take the bolt, stick it in, and then you are going to take the joiner. You might wonder, kind of like, well, which way does the joiner go? You can go like this, or you can go like this. It screws in both ways, but it will be immediately apparent that this way right here is not correct, because again, it's got a gap. There's a nice big gap here, big enough where I can actually get the Allen key into it. So when you see gaps on this gun, that's the way it typically goes, even with the HPR and whatever else. When you see a gap, you know you've done something wrong. So you want that O-ring to sit with the front section. And again, I don't think that O-ring actually seals anything. I think the only point of that O-ring, the only point at all, is to hold the front section to the joiner. It's like a barrel O-ring. It's just for friction. Anyway, because this bolt goes back and forth like this, both of those the inner surface O-rings, both on the joiner and on the front part of the front section, are also dynamic O-rings. So you have 3 dynamic O-rings, on which one might be a bumper on the bolt section itself, and then 2 inner surface O-rings, one on the joiner and one on the front section. So it is a total of 5 dynamics, but one might be a bumper, so if you don't count bumpers as dynamic, then it's only 4 dynamics. Everything else in this gun is going to end up being static. Drop the keg back in. Again, I'll put it in the wrong way first, and when you're trying to screw this in, it is going to stop. And there's going to be a gap, a big one. Nice big gap here. That's how you know you've done something wrong. You'll also probably, once you've done this a couple times, you'll know that the keg isn't sitting correctly because it just doesn't go in very far. So when you flip this keg around, it goes much deeper in, as you can see. You see the threads here, and then this conversion over into solid metal, and then this thing goes past it. But when you have it the other way, it doesn't even go past the threads. So you'll know that you have it wrong. It's still, obviously people screw them in incorrectly anyway, but it's still, you're going to know that it's wrong. And then as you can see, when it's correct, it doesn't have the big gap. Before it was sitting like this. But it'll screw all the way in there. And then stick your power tube in there. And then, it's just to stick it in, there's nothing fancy. You screw in this back section, whatever the hell it is. Like I said, I think its only function is to actually hold that power tube in place. And then this part doesn't attach. So that is the entire bolt engine right there. Like I said, it's not overly complicated to work on and put it back together. There's definitely clues to know when you've put it together incorrectly. One mistake that I see a lot, other than what I said with having the joiner backwards and stuff like that, or the valve backwards, is with the power tube. I've seen people put the power tube, or at least attempt to put the power tube on the inside here, or they put this part on and then jam the power tube in the back. So yeah, I could see how people could screw that up, especially by putting the power tube in the back, but it's really a rookie mistake, and I promise you, it's one that you're just going to make one time. There we go. Come on. There we go. And then put that on here. Actually, now that I think about it, this, the bolt kind of rides on the power tube as well. That might mean that those two, these two O-rings here are also, yeah, that makes sense. These two would also be dynamic. I apologize. So that brings dynamics up to 7 O-rings. You know, 6 if you don't count the bumper. This back one most certainly is not dynamic though. That thing just provides a seal in the back. So 7 dynamic O-rings, 6 if you only count the bumper. But considering that it has 18 in the damn thing, that's still not too many dynamics. It's got a lot of static O-rings. Let me get the grease off my hands here. Ooh, we're still under an hour. I am doing good. And this gun's basically done. So what you're going to want to do, take the gun like this. You know, you're going to want, remember, you're going to want that hole here. Mine's a little bit beaten up so it's really easy to see. To match up with this one right there. So when you put this in, try to line it up. It's not a huge deal if you get it wrong, because you can fix it. And then you're just going to have to look down that hole to see that it's lined up correctly. And this one is not lined up correctly. It's a little bit too far this way. So what I'm going to do is just kind of attempt to push it back just a tad. You know, if you push that back just a little bit, you can kind of grab here, and then you give it a little tiny spin, and then press it forward again. And then as you hopefully can see, the holes are pretty much lined up. So then I will, man, my hands are still greasy even after I wiped them. Alright, there we go. I'm on here. Just get it on your Allen key and try to get it started. As long as you get a little quarter turn, you're good to go. Start screwing it in. If it puts up resistance before it bottoms out, I definitely suggest that you just stop. Don't try to force on. You could cause damage. So just get it right, nice and in there, and then it's smooth sailing. So that's the bolt engine, and the Droid in general. And get the back cap on here. Again, that would be a very stupid mistake if you forget to put the bolt cap in and you gas it up. Nothing's going to go flying out the back or anything like that thanks to that set screw. But it's still quite the embarrassing mistake. Let me go. There we go. So that's the Droid. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, oh man, a Droid or a clone would take me significantly longer to get through. But like I said, they made everything really straightforward. You wouldn't even need to strip it as much as I did. You're obviously not going to be taking off the frame on a day-to-day basis. There's no seals in there. There's no air hose. There's no bars. There's no nothing. The only seals... Okay, I apologize. I lied. There are seals, but it's only on the manifold and the solenoid. So it's not anything that you're really going to screw with. HPR very rarely needs to be done, maybe 15, 20 cases. The O-ring that is on that front block, you only need to remove and work on if you're leaking here. If you have any sort of leak there, it's probably that O-ring. But that thing, you know, a lot of O-rings just don't magically start leaking. The reason you start getting problems with an O-ring like that, or on other guns that are macro-lineless body seals and stuff, usually the reason you have that is because you cracked the damn thing open and fucked them up. That's the bottom line, to be honest with you. They just sit there and they provide a seal. How are you going to cut something that just sits in its trench all day? The way that you end up doing it is by taking apart your gun when you don't need to. So I always suggest to people that if your gun is not having issues, do not open it up. You know, work on your bolt system every day if you want to. Fine, whatever. You risk damaging O-rings, but these body seals and stuff, everything that's static, don't go pulling it apart. You're just asking for trouble. You're gonna give it, you know, your gun's working fine, and you say, "Well, I'm just gonna monkey around with it." You pull the thing apart, and then you have leaks. Even myself, I'm not sure how many people saw my demon video. Same thing. It was just the body seal, but a problem that it didn't have before. Suddenly, I made a problem, and if I had cut an O-ring, or if it wasn't that body seal, or if I didn't know that that leak was coming from the body seal, if it was on the bolt engine, for example, I might spend the next couple hours trying to troubleshoot problems because I decided that I was going to crack it open for fun and start screwing around. So I suggest that you don't mess around inside your gun, especially solenoids. I say this in every single video. I'm going to say it in this video too. Solenoids, don't pull them off. Manifolds, don't touch the damn things. If it's leaking, if it's giving you problems, and you feel confident that you're actually a decent tech, then I suggest that you maybe look at it if you think it's just a gasket. Solenoids in general, for your average person, do not open a solenoid. You are going to cost yourself, if it's a DP gun, you know, the solenoid is going to be like 30 bucks. Whatever, you know, if you can fix it, it's going to save you the money for sending the damn thing in. And if you break the noid, it's not going to be any big deal anyway. But for most guns, especially like Planet Eclipse or something like that, where you're talking $150, $180, $200, please don't go messing with your solenoids. You're just asking to screw things up. So stick to your bolt engine. If you're not having issues other places, don't do it. Maybe every year or every 15 to 20 cases, take apart the HPR. Not a lot that you're going to mess up there, but body seals, stuff like that, don't go screwing with them. You're just asking for trouble. So that's the gun. Give her a quick air up. We'll see if I've caused myself any problems. I don't think that I have, but you never know. Every single person, no matter how good you are at what you do, and I don't consider myself an amazing tech, by the way, but can I tech? Yes. Do I consider myself an amazing tech? No. But, you know, you're always running the risk that you're going to have leaks afterwards. And there's no leaks. Doesn't leak, no issues, but there's always the potential for that. Again, this gun does not fully degas. I'm not sure if I can drain it through the HPR. A lot of guns I drain through the HPR. So let's see. Oh man, this swivel is going to give me crap. You okay? I suggest not draining through the HPR because that blew out the center section in the yeah, okay, my wife's pissed off now. The center section in the ASA. So that little block thing that I pulled out of here, it blew it straight out the back. So tip number one of degassing this thing, especially with an Bob Long ASA apparently, don't try to degas it that way. But the gun's now degassed.
And wife really, really scared.
Oh, and the wife is really, really scared. So, that's the droid. I'm going to attempt to find all the pieces that I now blew out of this thing. And have a good evening.